Once upon a time, there lived a woman in a small village in the middle of a deep, dark forest. The woman used to be beautiful, a fair maiden who was lauded by the village for her splendor. Each morning, she would awaken to a crowd of suitors throwing flowers and begging for her hand, and each night she would lie with her lover, a warrior who had become famous for his heroism. The woman's strikingly blue eyes were admired throughout the land, and her hair was golden sunlight, and for years she was happy. One hot summer day, her lover went out, promising to bring her glory and spoils of war. He was gone throughout the day and into the night, and for the first time in years the woman was alone. For hours she sat by the open door, looking towards the sky and praying for his safe return. She stayed awake until the moon sank into the horizon and the stars were swallowed by the sun, and still he did not come. For a week she waited. She did not sleep. She only gazed into the horizon and prayed for her lover's return. With each day her lover was away, the crowd of suitors in her yard only grew, and yet she barely noticed. On the seventh day, she stepped out to greet the suitors for the first time, her eyes dull, her hair a tangled mess. Only then did the tears come, and she collapsed. The swarm of men rushed forward to dry her tears, to lift her up, to embrace her and whisper words as sweet as honey. But when they began to smooth her hair, to dust off her clothing, to make her as beautiful as before, she drew away from them. The crowd stayed there for half the night, and when she stepped out again, dressed in black lace and a raven veil, half immediately dropped to their knees to propose, but not one offered kind words, and when the woman saw their hunger and their lust, her heart hardened. In the light of the moon, the woman stepped out of her home, and the suitors surrounded her like a birdcage. But she kept walking, and they slowly parted for her. She did not turn back, did not acknowledge their desperate fingers or their words of promise. She only walked into the darkness of the forest, where no suitors followed in fear of shadows and wolves and ghosts. The woman had no such fear, not any more. And when she reached the heart of the forest, where not even songbirds dwelt, she knelt to the earth and sobbed. And the earth heard her, and pitied her, and so, when the woman raised her head, she saw a little cottage, with birch walls and a roof made of woven twigs and leaves. There the woman lived, learning the ways of the owls and the wolves, the magic of the pines and the moss and the streams. She dug in the dirt with her hands to find old mystic roots, which she ground into paste and spread across her skin. She pressed her ear against stones and listened to the song of the forest. She learned the magic of the woods and thought that, perhaps, she could learn to be happy again. But the villagers had not forgotten her, and they were angry. Blinded by jealousy and fury, thieves, men who used to be her suitors, crept in from the village and ransacked her forest home, stealing her precious herbs and destroying her wooden furniture. When she awoke, she found her home empty and broken, and so a new feeling overtook her. Ice settled in her veins, down her spine, and into her heart. She went out into the woods that very day and prayed, pushing her magic deep into the earth. She did not pray to be left alone. No, her heart had been too hardened for that. She only wished for revenge. She did not seek to defend herself, but to hurt those who had hurt her, who had watched her grief but only saw opportunity. When the woman opened her eyes, they were no longer blue, but a shimmering silver. Her nails were pure iron, sharpened into daggers which would never dull. She ran a tongue across her teeth and felt the jagged edges of fangs. Her hair, once glowing and golden, was now thick and black like a raven's feathers. She slept that night again, and as sure as the seed grows, so did two more thieves arrive, having heard of the previous robber's exploits. They crept in, silent as shadows, and began to fill bags with precious stones and wooden carvings, with owl feathers and chunks of amber and anything else they could lay their hands on. But as they turned to leave, they found the wooden door stuck. They wrestled with the thing, pulling with all their might, but the house refused to let them leave. Their clamor awoke the woman, who stalked down her stairs towards the two men. The thieves turned slowly to face her, knives in shaky hands. But as she opened her mouth, fangs dripping with saliva, her claws twitching, her silver eyes as cold as steel, they dropped their weapons and screamed. They did not return to the village that night. Neither did the scouting party who went to search for them. nor the village dared to approach her cottage, so, for years, she remained content and alone. But she still hated the cruelty of the outside world, and her soul grew darker and darker because of it. She spent decades with nothing but the trees and the wind for company. On occasion, a traveler would stumble into her domain, and in her anger and odium she would lure them in with visions of wealth and safety before consuming them. In each terrified face, she saw her dead lover, or the unkind suitors, or the merciless thieves, and she hated more and more. Until one day, when 2 young children saw her home. By then the woman was old, her raven hair now the color of snow, her flesh sagging, her hands bony, her mind addled and broken. But her heart had not changed. The ice had not thawed. So with visions of candy and kindness, the woman tempted the 2 children inside. But they escaped, and through deceit and cunning, they burnt the woman alive in the very same oven which she had used the night before to roast a rabbit which she had caught. The cottage burnt with it, and without her presence, the magic drained away from the forest. Some say that if one travels to the heart of the woods, they can still hear her weeping for the lover she lost. Others say that on moonless nights, her death cries can still be heard echoing through the pines. Once, a traveler claimed to have seen the ghost watching from the charred ruins of her home, tempering the cruelty of any who dare enter the forest. Not all fairy tales have a happy ending. The woman was a witch, but the witch was also a woman. And though the world remembers the witch, the woman, the human, is just as important.